What's happening in Nepal right now is absolute madness, a wild, chaotic mess. What you're looking at is Nepal's federal parliament. This is the government headquarters palace, and here we have the Hilton Hotel in Kathmandu. The most extreme kind of violence you can imagine in the context of political protests has taken over the streets of Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal. It all began when the Nepali government attempted to ban major social media platforms, including YouTube, WhatsApp, and even LinkedIn. In total, Nepal banned 26 social media platforms, among them Facebook and YouTube. That was the last straw. From that moment, the anger over corruption and the lack of opportunities for young people quickly exploded, and then the country literally went up in flames. These protests are already being called the Generation Z Revolt, a massive outburst of social rage that has left us with horrifying images. For instance, the wife of former Nepali Prime Minister Kanel was burned alive after protesters set fire to her home. Five-time Prime Minister Toiba and his wife were assaulted. Kanel's wife was set on fire, becoming the brutal face of the Gen Z protests. We've seen ministers chased by mobs, stripped naked, and lynched in the streets, like what happened to the finance minister. Images of destruction and burning buildings have gone around the world. The government has responded with force, trying to regain control. Security forces have used live ammunition, which has made the death toll rise rapidly. In just 2 days of violence, 30 people were killed and more than 1,000 injured. But what exactly is going on? What explains this wild chaos? It all began on Monday, September 8th, the first day of violence. Most of the casualties occurred around parliament and government buildings during an attempted assault, making it clear that this was far from just a scare. And sure enough, it wasn't an isolated outburst, it was just the beginning. The government's decision to ban social media only lit a fuse that had been smoldering for years. The very next day, Tuesday, September 9th, Kathmandu literally burned. Several government buildings and numerous homes of political leaders were reduced to ashes. Even the national parliament itself and the headquarters of the Nepali Congress Party, the main party in the governing coalition, were burned down. To top it off, protesters looted the home of the party leader and brutally beat both him and his wife. In short, no one is safe. In just 4 days, the foreign minister went from smiling for cameras while presenting 2 shiny new airplanes donated by Washington to being the target of an enraged mob. Yes, the foreign minister herself was beaten just steps from her own home by an out-of-control crowd. The crisis escalated so badly that the prime minister had no choice but to resign. At the same time, the government was forced to roll back its flagship measure, the ban on social media. In his resignation statement, the prime minister said, "Given the difficult situation the country is facing, I resign as of today to help solve this crisis and to contribute to a political resolution in accordance with the Constitution." But words aside, the damage has been devastating. Dozens of official vehicles reduced to scrap metal, ministries destroyed, and political leaders fleeing to save their lives. Shocking events are taking place, like Gen Z protesters breaking into a prison to free former Prime Minister Rabi Lamashane and over 15 other inmates. Faced with this madness, Nepal's army chief had to speak out. Some groups are taking undue advantage of the crisis and causing severe harm to citizens and public property. We call on protesters to stop and engage in dialogue to find a peaceful solution for the nation. Now, you may be wondering, if the government has already reversed the social media ban, why hasn't the unrest ended? The answer is simple. The ban was just the spark. The real fire comes from years of corruption, a broken system where politicians get rich, while ordinary people are left with no opportunities. According to Transparency International, 84% of Nepalists believe corruption is a huge problem. It estimated that 1 in 10 citizens pays bribes every year just to access basic public services. That's why Nepal ranks 107th out of 180 countries on the Corruption Perceptions Index. But what makes these protests unique is that they're not just political, they're generational. It's Nepal's frustrated and furious youth who have erupted. Nepal became a democracy only in 2008, after a brutal civil war that left over 17,000 dead. The monarchy was abolished, and a new constitution was adopted in 2015. But on paper, democracy isn't the same as real democracy. For Gen Z, voting every 5 years is pointless when their lives never improve. Nepal is a small, mountainous country, landlocked between India and China, with around 31 million people. As of 2024, 1 in 5 Nepalese lives in poverty. Youth unemployment is very high, and most jobs are informal, poorly paid, and concentrated in agriculture. That's why so many people leave. In the 2023 to 2024 fiscal year alone, over 741,000 Nepalese went abroad to work, mostly in construction in Malaysia, India, or the Gulf states. Today, remittances from workers abroad make up over 26% of Nepal's GDP, more than $11 billion in 2024. Think about it. Your brother is in Qatar, your cousin in Saudi Arabia, your son in Malaysia, and suddenly the government cuts WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram. You can't call them. You can't see if they're okay. Cutting social media is like cutting the umbilical cord that keeps millions of families connected and also sustains the economy. But the deeper reason for the anger is corruption. One example that went viral online was the Nepo kids. Campaign videos showing the lavish lifestyles of elite politicians, children, luxury cars, Maldives, vacations, designer clothes. Meanwhile, ordinary young Nepalese watch their friends leave to wash dishes in Dubai or carry bricks in Malaysia. The outrage was inevitable. That's why the government wanted to ban social media, to shield themselves and their families from online exposure and criticism, and corruption scandals in Nepal are endless. Take the $100 million embezzlement scandal during the construction of Pokhara International Airport, where funds from Chinese loans disappeared into the pockets of politicians, officials, and contractors. Nothing happened. Or the 2023 fake Bhutanese refugee scam, where ministers and top officials tricked unemployed youth into paying for fake documents promising resettlement in the US. Again, no real consequences. So this revolt isn't about memes or hashtags. It's about decades of broken promises, systemic corruption, and an economy that pushes young people out of the country. Since abolishing the monarchy in 2008, Nepal has had 14 different governments in 15 years. It's been one failed administration after another. The key questions now are, what happens when the fires die down? Can Nepal turn this rage into real political reform? Or will it fall back into the same cycle of corruption, poverty, and emigration? Right now, Nepal is in flames. A prime minister has resigned, parliament is burned to the ground, and the political vacuum is huge. Experts warn that unless there's a unity government, the country faces prolonged chaos. Some say the military could step in as the only institution with real power, but that risks sliding into authoritarianism. We can't forget the two giants watching closely, India and China. Nepal isn't isolated, it's wedged between two superpowers. India's Prime Minister Modi reacted quickly, warning that instability in Nepal threatens Indian security. At the same time, the ousted Nepali leader had been leaning heavily toward China through Belt and Road projects, which worried New Delhi. Now, with him gone, Nepal's next government will have to decide which way to lean toward India or China. So the future of Nepal is at a crossroads, either a unity government with army backing or a prolonged power vacuum. Meanwhile, young Nepalese are shouting in the streets that they won't accept more lies. If this energy becomes a real political movement, Nepal could see historic change. But if not, it will likely fall back into the same old pattern. Recycled politicians, hidden corruption, and young people buying one-way tickets abroad. So, the question is, will this wave of violence at least change Nepal's course, or will it just leave the country in the hands of the same old elites?